On this episode, we're off to a very special place. I'm of course referring to the Bell Centre in Montreal, Quebec. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to Rinks Around the League. I'm your host, Jeff Nash, and on this episode, we're heading off to the Bell Centre in Montreal, Quebec, home of the Montreal Canadiens. Construction of the Bell Centre began June 22nd, 1993, and opened on March 16th, 1996, at a cost of $270 million, and is owned by the Molson family. Its seating capacity is 21,288, and its scoreboard measures 29.6 by 17 feet. Secondary ticket price ranks them 8th in the league at $170. In 2002, Bell Canada paid $100 million over 20 years. That sum already includes the $40 million Bell already pays for arena advertising. Now, the Bell Centre is probably the closest thing you'll ever come to being in a hockey cathedral. And just like religion, you don't mess with tradition. And in Montreal, the Canadiens is basically the religion of the city, province, even hockey. Now, I never got to visit the Montreal Forum, but I think the Bell Centre echoes a lot of character and tradition that was once housed in the Forum. Let's first talk about the bowl. When you first enter the rink and enter that bowl and look around, it's pretty massive. They literally have seats all the way to the rafters. And in fact, the seats are so steep that upper bowl actually has guardrails to help fans get to the seats and to keep them in them. The overall design of the bowl is very simple. There's 2 levels of luxury boxes, but other than that simple design, they just try to cram as many seats into the building as possible. I'm a fan and I have great respect for the franchise to keep things simple and traditional. Next, we're going to talk about the banners. When you walk in that bowl, you look around, you see all these seats, and the next thing that takes your breath away when you look up in those rafters are all those banners. The Habs are the oldest and longest running hockey club in the world. In total, they've won the Stanley Cup 24 times, 22 of those since 1927. And when you see all those white banners hanging in the rafters in the Bell Centre, it's just awe-inspiring. In fact, despite winning multiple conference championships, the Canadiens only raise Stanley Cup banners. This tradition was adopted back in the old days in the Montreal Forum, and it continues to this day. They also have 15 retired banners representing 18 players, including the likes of Maurice Richard, Guy Lafleur, Jean Beliveau, and Patrick Roy. A little trivia fact for you, they also have a banner hanging in the rafters representing 4 baseball players of the former MLB Montreal Expos. And if you can tear your eyes off the banners up in the rafters, you may notice that the walls behind the upper bowl is covered with tributes to former players as well. Again, it can't be understated. The bowl is impressive. When I last visited the Bell Centre, it was right after Jean Beliveau passed away, and it was really touching that they paid tribute to him, not only with a number 4 behind the nets on the ice surface, and they decorated his seat with the Montreal Canadiens jersey and a number 4 for the rest of the season. Montreal fans, let me know, is that seat still decorated with the number 4? I think it would be really cool if it was, but I'm not entirely sure if it still is. Now let's move away from the bowl and talk about the main concourse. Now the main concourse is pretty impressive. It's got lots of food and bev options and a large team store. But the one thing that sets it apart from all the other main concourses in the league is its memorabilia. There's lots of displays reflecting the Canadiens' rich hockey history all over the main concourse. The main concourse is almost its own little hockey museum. Speaking of museums, sadly the Bell Centre closed its doors to its own Montreal Canadiens Hall of Fame that was located in the basement of the Bell Centre. Not knowing that at the time, I was pretty lucky enough to check it out. It's too bad because it was a pretty impressive museum. They closed it in 2015 to make way for a better fan experience. Outside the main gates, there are bronze statues of Howie Morenz, Maurice Richard, Jean Beliveau, and Guy Lafleur. Now we'll head back inside and go to event level and head to the entrance to the Montreal Canadiens locker room. They have a huge display with all the cup championships as well as a team photo. It makes for a very iconic entrance to the Habs dressing room. And just like the Joe Louis Arena, the Bell Centre is one of the few rinks that has wooden player benches, although it's a lot nicer than the ones in Joe Louis. It has a much nicer finish to it, but it keeps the old tradition alive, and I like that. The media broadcast positions are up in a gondola and circles the entire rink. It's a great perch for people covering the game. And on a special note, I got to interview the legendary broadcaster Bob Cole in his broadcast booth before he called the game that afternoon. It was a pretty cool and special moment. And it's the largest rink in the league in terms of capacity at 21,288. Now, after all that, is there anything I like about the rink? I can go on and on about the details about this rink. It's a great hockey building. Simplicity goes a long way, not only with the branding, but also the building itself. I have to step away from describing the physical attributes of this building and instead describe to you how it all ties together to produce what this building is famous for, and that would be its in-game experience. First off, you're in Montreal. It's probably the closest experience you'll have watching a game in another country without having to leave North America. It's old, it's steeped in history and tradition, and it's definitely unique to Canada. Food, the fashion, the culture, it's just amazing. Now, being right downtown in Montreal, it gives you ample opportunity to go to bars, restaurants, and shopping before the game. The whole city of Montreal just seems to have a buzz to it. And if you're in the downtown core before a game, you'll see a lot of fans wearing the bleu, blanc et rouge jerseys around. And I highly recommend going to a game because it's kind of hard to describe how it feels going to a Habs game. You just get this overwhelming sense that it's a very traditional thing to do. When the doors open, the fans start entering the building and the buzz starts to grow. That iconic organ starts to play as fans start to head into that lower bowl, ready to take in the warm-ups. There's a noticeable amount of families and kids at these games. Most other hockey markets are trying to tap into the young professionals to try to be that hot ticket in town. But in Montreal, you see a lot of young fans. And I think the Canadiens organization caters to this, and it's smart. One way to keep the tradition alive is to involve the youngest of your fan base. Once the crowd sets in and the game starts, the crowd is actually pretty quiet and reserved, but you know they're watching every single play of that game. But you'll know when something happens because the crowd will get really energetic, start whistling, and make a lot of noise. I remember Connor McDavid's first game there. He decided to make a behind-the-back pass or shot, and he missed, but it drove the crowd wild. And tech-wise, the in-game presentation is really well done. They make great use of their giant scoreboard, the LED rings, and the on-ice projection. If you're currently making a list of places to go in the NHL, make sure Montreal is near the top of your list. It's a must-see for hockey fans. And hey, if you're in town but the Canadiens are out of town, you can actually do tours of the Bell Center. I'll include a link in the description below. Now, is there anything I don't like about the Bell Center? Well, I'm not a huge fan that they got rid of that museum. It was a really cool museum. They did a really good job with that. And maybe just another small thing I don't like is the outside of the rink. In my opinion, it just lacks a design personality. It's kind of half glass, brown brick, white cement. I mean, what is it? It doesn't really stick out in the Montreal skyline like other rinks like Rogers Place, MSG, Staples Center. But you know what? It's the inside that counts, and the Bell Center definitely makes up for that. All right, that does it for Montreal. On the next episode, we're off to the Music City to visit the Bridgestone Arena, home of the Nashville Predators. As always, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at _the Rinks, on Facebook at the Rinks, and on YouTube at Rinks Around the League. Hit subscribe and ring that bell. Growing up in Alberta, obviously I was a huge Oilers fan, but I was also a Canadiens fan. And not only because of their rich hockey history, but also because of this story. And it's Rock Carrier's The Hockey Sweater. And for our international or maybe American viewers, this book right here, this story is just so Canadian. The animated classic is what I grew up watching, and I'll include a link down below to the National Film Board so people can watch it. It just echoes a lot of what hockey is like to kids in Canada, even though this story is set way back during the Maurice Richard era of the Canadiens. To summarize the story, it's about a boy who plays hockey, and everybody in Montreal loves Maurice Richard. They all wear the number 9, they all wear the Montreal Canadiens jersey, they all want to be like Maurice Richard. In a twist, he outgrows his sweater, and his mom orders one from the Eaton's catalog, which is another very Canadian thing, and they send him a Toronto Maple Leafs sweater, which is like the worst thing you could give a Canadiens fan. It's a story I grew up reading and watching, so I hope they enjoyed.